Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and today we're talking about two new products. And we've got the Gucci palettes. These are called eyeshadow palettes, but they're really more of a face palette. I picked up two of the three. And then also the new Valentino concealer. So let's start with the Valentino concealer. So as you're looking at the packaging, it is plastic here. We have our traditional red Valentino packaging with the logo and so forth. And this retails for $35 US. They have quite an expansive shade range here. I picked up shade LIGR2 and we have 6.5 milliliters of product here. Now the doe foot applicator here, you can see that it has a slightly different curvature to it. Look at that from the side. You see how instead of just going straight angle, it kind of like goes whoosh. And that I think is really helpful because this wand actually really helps you get just a little bit of product out. So it doesn't really glop on like some of the concealer wands can. So I feel like it's definitely much more controlled than other wands. And I think that's really beneficial. So this here is the shade that I picked up. Let me just go ahead and spread out the tail end of that a little bit for you. And you can see that there's definitely a hydrating, radiant finish there. Let's talk about some details while we look at some demos and a wear test. So just a few details about this particular concealer. This is 6.5 milliliters. It has a 6-month shelf life once opened, and it's made in France. It does come in 20 different shades. And this is going to be a hydrating, radiant concealer. So you could see even with my hand swatch that you have a little radiance there. And it's definitely hydrating. It feels more like a light eye cream. And I would say that it stays that way throughout the day. So it's very, very comfortable. Some key ingredients here. We have caffeine and vitamin E, which help to depuff and brighten your eyes. We also have Valentino's Roma Light Complex, which is essentially just their complex of color boosting pearls to kind of enhance radiance. Now, according to Valentino, this is a 24-hour wear and hydration care infused full coverage concealer. The best concealer to avoid any feeling of cakiness or dryness. Its texture is smooth and creamy for a creaseless and weightless second skin finish that remains comfortable throughout the day. So I have not tested it for 24 hours, but I have to say, you know, even after 16 hours, which is the longest I've worn this, you know, it looks incredible. I'm very, very impressed with the wear on this. I'll show you that in the wear test in just a minute. But full coverage, I would say this is medium. It can be built up to full coverage, but I think it's really a true medium coverage concealer. You could definitely sheer it out if you want, mix it with a little eye cream if you would like something lighter coverage, but it's a true medium with one coat and you can build that up a little bit further. Now, as I mentioned, the applicator for this concealer, I think is really, really helpful. It's very helpful to apply the concealer under the eyes, and they're calling this the feather applicator. And according to Valentino, it was designed to embrace the user's face features, a flat surface to build coverage around delicate areas, a pointed tip for precise application, and ultra flexibility to deliver the perfect amount of product. I have to say it's a really great shape. I really like that. Now, according to Valentino, we also have a triple technique application. So number one is to brighten. So this is for dark circles. You can cover dark circles to minimize signs of fatigue. And you can use a shade lighter than your skin tone in order to do that. They also recommend using this for coverage. So covering any flaws or imperfections using a concealer that matches your skin tone. Or of course you can get a shade that is deeper than your skin tone for sculpting. And you can use this for full face or under the eyes. Now I have tried this concealer as a full face concealer and I've also tried it under the eyes. I personally prefer this one specifically under the eyes. It performs so well there. I mean, it performs great all over the face as well, but I do think that it has just a little bit more light reflection. It's almost more like a pearly finish when I use it all over the face, and that's just a little bit more evident. So I feel like it just doesn't look as natural all over the face. That might be partially because of the particular shade that I use, but I just find that that level of radiance looks better under the eye than it it does all over the face. Now, as for my actual thoughts on this concealer, if you couldn't tell, I think this is a really great concealer. I'm incredibly impressed with this. You know, I just recently went through the Givenchy concealer. I had the video up on that last week. This one I think is way better. You know, the Givenchy I thought was a nice concealer, but the Valentino one here kind of blows it out of the water. You can see that there's really no creasing with this. It stays hydrated. It's comfortable. You know, it looks fantastic. You know, it does not look makeup-y at all under the eyes. And I just think that it performs really well. So I really like this. Now, keep in mind, some concealers do come in larger sizes. This is 6.5 milliliters, whereas the the Givenchy was actually 11 milliliters. So that's, you know, twice the size for the Givenchy than the Valentino. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, a lot of times we look at product size and we think, okay, well, the bigger one, we're getting a better value. But whenever you're using something around your eyes, you really need to exercise caution with contamination. So I actually prefer the smaller size of the Valentino. It does bring your price per gram or per ounce up, but I would prefer to get these concealers in smaller sizes that I can use up and then get a new fresh one a little bit sooner. So personally, I think the smaller size is actually a plus in this case, but when you are comparing concealers, don't forget to check your actual, you know, weight or volume amount of product here. So this is the Valentino concealer in LIGR2 after a set for a while, and you can see that this is going to be pretty peachy. Let's just do a few swatch comparisons. Well, first, let me go ahead and show you a fresh swatch of the Valentino right next to it. So you can see that there is a little bit of oxidation with that. That's going to be normal for any of these types of liquid products, but it's not super significant. It definitely looks a little bit shinier here, so it might be coming off a little bit whiter in the camera, but it's actually very close in color to it dried down. Next, we have the Givenchy concealer, and this is shade N95. You can see that this wand here is much larger. I particularly really like this one for a full face concealer, but I prefer the Valentino for under the eyes. So you can see that N95 is going to have a little bit more beige in there. It's not quite as peachy, and it's slightly deeper, but pretty close to the same level of pigmentation. We also have the Chanel corrector in BR02. And you can see that this is going to be a little bit rosier, whereas the Valentino is peachier. But other than that, they're going to be very, very close in color. And this is the Tom Ford shade and Illuminate. And this is in 0N0 Blanc. So this is kind of like a beige neutral. It's going to be a little bit lighter there. And it really is a true neutral. You don't have any sort of like pink or yellow tones really in there. And then let's just take a look at the Chanel corrector. And this is the Sublimage corrector in shade 02. This is one of my favorite concealers. So I just wanted to compare those side by side. You can see the Chanel is going to be more pink. And you can see that the 02 is very close to the Chanel corrector in 02. And yeah. That's how these shades all kind of stack up. I will have a concealer showdown coming up in probably like 2 or 3 weeks would be my goal here. It's going to take a little while, but we'll go through all of the concealers I have and, you know, kind of go through the pros and cons of each, how best to use them and so forth. And, you know, hopefully if you're searching for a concealer, you'll find one that you like there. Now let's go ahead and move on to the Gucci palettes. And I have to say, these surprised me. So while we're talking, let's start off with the demos, and then we'll go ahead and do swatches and comparisons afterwards. Now, there are 3 new Gucci quads that have released, and they are calling them eyeshadow quads. However, if you actually look at the packaging, on the packaging, they are promoted as a multi-use cream and powder quad eye palette. And I have to say, these are really essentially like a great travel size face palette, and I'm impressed. So you have 6.1 grams of product. You have an 18-month shelf life. These are made in Italy, and I have to say that they are, nicer than I expected. I was thinking they were an eyeshadow quad. I didn't realize when I ordered them that they were a face palette. Now, when I ordered them, I saw the red shades in there and I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to use those for blushes. But I did not realize the red shades are actually cream products. So I found that out after I ordered. And these were available at Saks. They sold out in a few hours, but they will be back soon. And, it's kind of just like, I guess, an early launch. So they will be back. And let's talk a little bit about these quads. So the packaging on this, it is plastic. I'm not sure if the outer coating is actually metal or just plastic made to look like metal, but it does feel like perhaps it's a lightweight metal covering the plastic. And we do have a magnetic closure. There's a mirror inside, and it does come with a utensil. So in the center of the palette, you have one side's a foam tip applicator and the other side is a little brush. Now we have 4 shades in each of these quads. The first shade, so the top left shade for each of these, is a powder intended for the eyes and the face. So this will be a light shimmery shade, and you can use this as a highlight on the eyes, or if you really wanted a shimmery face powder, you could dust this lightly all over your face for a shimmery finishing powder as well. Next, the second shade, so this would be the top right, we're looking at strictly an eyeshadow here. Then if we go down to the bottom left, again, we're looking at another powder product that is for eyes and cheeks. So in the palette Summerina Brown, which is the first palette, that one can be used kind of as a contour shade. There's a little bit of gray in the undertone, so it does work for contour. And the Wild Bouquet shade, number 3, has a lavender shade there, and that could be used, as a blush or as a mixer for the blush. And yeah, so, you could use those on the cheeks as well. And then our fourth shade there is actually going to be a cream product, and that is an eyes, lips, and cheek product. So you can definitely, use that everywhere. And I use that as blush and as lipstick. Today, I'm actually wearing one of the Gucci matte liquid lipsticks instead, but I have worn these for a few days now. I wanted to test these out. I have wear tests to show you as well. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with how these perform. Now, if you have tried the big Gucci eyeshadow palettes, there have been 2 that have been released so far. If you've tried those and you did not like the formula of those shadows, then you won't like these. The eyeshadow formula here, it's that same kind of powdery formula. It seems more like an old-fashioned traditional powder shadow. That's what we have for 3 of the 4 shades here. So if you have tried those and you didn't like them, just know that these will be the same type of formula. Now, that being said, these can be a little powdery, dusty. There's kick up in the pan when you're using it. So it can get a little bit messy, but they go on beautifully. They blend out well. And as they sit on your skin, they kind of do meld with your face. So as your natural oils kind of fuse with those powders, they will kind of give you more of a melted in look, and they last without creasing. So at least for me, I have worn these, you'll see in the wear test, I have worn these for, I forget how many hours I got up to, but it was a long day and no creasing whatsoever. I have to say I was really impressed with that. And as for the cream product is kind of a drier cream. So when you touch it, it's one of those ones where, it's kind of more firm in the pan and you have just a little bit of slip. So it's a little bit of a drier cream. It does better with patting on the product versus kind of spreading or smearing it, just because it is a little bit drier. So it's going to take a little bit more. If you were to spread it, then it would just have it would take a little bit more effort to do that, and then you would move whatever product is underneath there. So I would definitely recommend more of a patting, tapping motion with this if you're using this on the cheeks. For the lips, you could pat this on with a finger. You can get kind of that light blurred lip stain look, or you could use a lip brush and build that up to a deeper shade. Now, I have to say, both of the reds in both of the palettes, they look cool toned in the photos, but when you swatch them, they're both warmer than they appear, particularly that in Wild Bouquet. It looks like a cool toned red and is actually an orange. Now, my overall thoughts on these palettes, I have to say that I think these will be fantastic for traveling. If you are somebody who travels frequently, this would be a great product to have with you because you truly can do pretty much an entire face with this palette. And I find it to be really useful. In particular, between these two, I find the Submarina Brown is a great neutral palette. You know, that is just like, for me, that one's my favorite because it's just so easy to use. It gives you such, you know, a sophisticated look. You can, you know, build it up, break it down. You know, if you would like a lighter eye look, both of these browns are a little bit deeper. So you could blend it with the sheer white shade, or you could just kind of softly pat on the lighter brown and then go over it with the shimmer shade. You can get a lighter look there. Checking in at almost 9 hours, and you can see everything is holding up really well. You can still see the color on the cheeks from the cream and the powder. And let me bring you in closer. So overall, everything is holding up really well. The eyeshadows, absolutely no sign of creasing or anything yet. Can definitely still see the highlighter and the powder. The cream blush has faded a little bit in the past hour, but an hour ago it was still pretty vibrant. So it's just starting to fade now. And overall, you know, everything's wearing extremely well. Okay, it has now been 12.5 hours. And let's take a look. So overall, you can see that everything is still holding up really well. Again, the cream blush has faded. The powder products, though, are still just as evident as they were earlier, and there is no sign of creasing. The Wild Bouquet, I have to say, I was nervous about this one, but I really wanted to try it. The green is more of a teal than a forest green, and you can see that in person, but in some of the promo photos, it did look a little bit more green than teal. So, you know, just something to note there. The lavender shade, however, on my skin tone at least, it doesn't really show up that well. Like, I can't really see the color on my skin. So that particular shade doesn't work as well for me as it might for other people. However, it performs well. The actual formula and so forth is consistent with everything else. It's just that particular shade doesn't work for me so well. But because of that, you know, I do find that this palette is a little bit more challenging to use for me because I do have to go in very lightly with that teal green. But I think it's a really beautiful color, and I have to say I do really like it. I don't regret purchasing either of these. Let's move into some swatches and comparison. So first, let me show you how it comes. So this is our packaging here, and you can see you still have that, you know, Gucci antique look to it. And then we have the opening here is magnetic. You have a mirror in the top, and there is a piece of plastic on the mirror. You can pull that off. Inside we have a little tray, and our tray actually does mark all of the items and uses for those items. And then we have our little foam tip applicator and brush here. So I did not use those in the demos, as you can see, but you can see it's cute. So foam tip on this side, here's our little brush here. So that'll be really useful for traveling. Now, I would definitely recommend keeping this because these are kind of a more powdery formula. It's very easy to get powder mixed into the cream. So that's kind of one of the cons of this palette. I do think that Gucci should have had like some sort of clear plastic window to go over this or something to keep this separated, because you are going to get powder kick-up or kickback when you are using the powder shades. So you're going to get powder in here. There's like no, unless you cover this with something while you are using the powders, I don't see any way to avoid getting powder in there. So it does, you know, you can dust it off easily, no issues there, but it would be nice if they had a different method there. So you can see I did kind of wipe away the dust, but you can still see how much dust I have in the pan just from using it. So this palette is number 1, Summerina Brown. And here are the first 2 shades. So we have this shimmery white, which actually has, it's kind of more of a pale gold. You can see there's a little yellow in there, but it's more of a champagne gold. It's not going to be your bright gold. And then we have this matte medium brown here. Look at that. It's kind of like, I would, not quite as dark as milk chocolate, but not quite as light as Swiss chocolate. You're kind of in between the two there. And then next, our third shade here is going to be more of a deep beige. And you can see that it's going to be pretty warm, but there is a faint hint of gray in there. So if you do choose to use it as a contour shade, it does work. So it definitely looks warmer here than it does when I use it as contour. And hopefully you noticed that during the demo. But you know, overall, these are going to be 3 fairly neutral shades. So this will lean a little warm, but it's a champagne with a touch of soft gold and even a tiny touch of peach in there. Now, the cream shade here, you can see that it looks kind of like a neutral red in there, almost like a brick red. And this is what it's going to look like here. So you can see it's going to be a little bit warmer when you swatch it than it is in the actual pan. And if we were to buff that out, here we go. And you can see just kind of putting this on that it does take a little pressure to kind of spread that. So that's why patting is a more recommended method. So this is going to be a soft, warm red, but you definitely have, you know, a little bit of an orange undertone in there. So there is a touch of orange. Now, palette 2, I did not pick up. That is going to be like all your rosy shades. And then palette 3 is Wild Bouquet. Now, again, you can see here just kind of the powder kick up with these. And let's go ahead and swatch these here. And you can see that our white shade here will be different. This is going to be a cooler tone than this. You can see there's definitely a little bit less of that peachy golden vibe. This is more of a true ivory. It's not going to be a bright snow white. It's definitely going to have ivory in there. It's kind of a little bit of a warm, soft white. And then here is our green. You can see it is a highly pigmented teal green, very beautiful. Definitely reminds me of, you know, some of the Gucci aesthetic, like packaging and stuff that we've seen in the past. You can see just from swiping though, how much, you know, kind of powder dust there is there. You can see it like on the purple and so forth. And then this one here is our purple. So as you can see, all of the shadows except for the first shades are going to be matte. And this is kind of your dusty lilac. There's a little bit of pink in there, which makes it, you know, more wearable on the cheeks. It's not going to be super blue, but it's definitely going to be kind of a more of a neutral dusty purple. And you've got a little bit of blue in there. You've also got a little bit of pink. So the last shade in here looks like a cooler tone red, but look at it when we actually put that on. You can see that this is actually going to be an orange red. So it's more orange than red. I think it's actually a really beautiful color, but It was not what I was expecting. I was expecting something to be a bit more blue toned. And you can see when you buff this out, you really get more of this fiery orange. So these are the 2 Gucci palettes I picked up. 1 Submarina Brown and 3 Wild Bouquet. Let me know which one you like better. So in my opinion, people probably will not be purchasing these because of like unique shades and so forth. You know, our shades in here are not super unique. Obviously this teal stands out, but it is still a shade that I feel like can be found to purchase. So I feel like the main reason people would purchase these is for having that compact face palette. And I really like it for that purpose. Let's go through a few of the Gucci shades and do some comparisons. So this is the first Gucci palette that came out. This is the, #1 floral is what it's called here. And we're gonna take a look at these 2 browns right here. So these are both mattes as well. This is our lighter brown and this is our deeper brown. And you can see that these are ever so slightly different, but they're pretty much the exact same shade. So if you have this first Gucci palette, these 2 browns here on the bottom, that's what you're getting in the Submarina Brown palette. Now, as for this palette here, there are no other shades similar to any of the colors in here. We don't really have a shimmery white or like ivory or anything in these. Definitely no like teals. Let's move on to the other one. So this is the second palette called Gorgeous Flora. And we're going to start off with this kind of dusty purple, dusty lilac shade. And let's see how this compares. This is, again, that's going to be the same shade there. So that is the first shade in the second row of this palette. Now we do not have a matte teal, but let's take a look at this. This is not going to be a match, but this is our closest. You can see this is going to have more blue in it. I'm going to put this one kind of right down here at the bottom though, because I do want to swatch something else near there. You can see that this is going to be more of a sky blue, like a turquoise sky blue versus a teal. We don't have anything like that teal. However, this is one of the newer Viseart palettes. This is the San Francisco Étoile palette, and we have a nice matte teal right here. So let's take a look at this. And I think this is going to be pretty close. Look at that. Very, very close. The Gucci has ever so slightly more green, but they're pretty close to it. And as a matter of fact, we also have some browns that are not going to be the same, but they're similar. So let me look at this one here. This is our lighter one. We'll put these 2 at the top. You can see that's going to have a bit more red in it. Let's look at the shade right above that. So this one here, this is going to be a little bit deeper. Again, this is going to have more red in it. All right, so that's going to be it for my comparisons with the Gucci palettes. And I have to say, overall, I really like the palettes and the concealer. I think they are both really nice products. For me personally, I think having the palette in Submarina Brown, that would be my choice there if I were to pick just one. I just think this is such a great everyday neutral palette to have on hand. So if you're like rushing, you want to put some makeup on quickly, this is really all you have to grab. So I like it for that aspect. I think this is great for traveling. And when I do go on a trip next time, I know I will definitely be including this. As for the Valentino concealer, as I mentioned, it's just so easy to use and it performs really well. This is definitely going to be a go-to under eye concealer for me. I can tell you right now, some of my favorite under eye concealers, we have the Say Brightening, the Hydra Beam concealer and the Sublimage from Chanel. Those are kind of like my top 2 under eye concealers. And this is joining that. And this is kind of in between the 2 of those. So, I'm really happy with those. And I hope this was helpful. So please let me know what your thoughts are on these items, whether you're interested in trying any of these or if you have already. And I will see you very soon. So have a wonderful day.